Hello and welcome back to THM. Now, for my interview this time, of course, I had to do a lot of hard work because last time's interview of Henry Neal was a great one. And I thought, how can I better that? And I think I've done a good job of it. So, who I'm catching up with today is a pioneer in many senses. He's actually the driver which built and raced the first ever diesel in the British Touring Car Championship. No, he's not them Seat Leons. He's actually a BMW 1 Series, which Rick Kerry piloted.
Yeah, it's a bit different how we sort of come about racing the diesel. And, you know, it's strange, Riggs. I look back now and think, I think if I'd known what I'd known now, and hindsight's always a wonderful thing, you know, I think I've done a lot better, you know, but it seemed to be not good to do something different. It was, you know, just things didn't quite work out how I'd like them to, but the fact that I got there and done the season is still something I hadn't thought probably 5 or 10 years before that actually happened. But there you go. But yeah.
Absolutely. So obviously just before you started, basically rinsed the BMW Cup, didn't you? Won that twice in a row.
Won the
so what point did you kind of think, you know, I'm going to go at the British Touring Cars, and how did it come about?
Bit weird, right? So I won the Kumos. I'd come second in 2004 on an old E34 M5, which I had to drive the nuts off to get anywhere near the front. Then I got the E36 and out of the box. That was so quick, and I think I'd fought so hard for the M5 to get it to handle the E36, and I sort of stumbled across Moton Suspension, who were doing the Andy Priaulx's car in the World Touring Cars. They just launched in the UK. So I was the first person in the UK to use Moton Suspension. And they done a deal with us that way. So we'd gone out in the M3, you know, pretty much won most of the races I've been in, apart from one. I'd had 17 wins and 5 seconds in this car. Second season, to be fair, some of the competition left. Martin Bell had gone up to touring cars that I'd beat the year before. People like Dave Kempton and Andy Allen, who were sort of quite the high profile, had sort of left the series. And I found it. I was racing within 2 or 3 minutes of the race. I was the length of the straight ahead of everybody else. And to me, it's not racing. It was just, I think, the people in the Kumos at the time, my car, handling-wise with the suspension, was probably, you know, was a well set up car, and I was normally pretty good at setting the car up. We got to the end, getting towards the end of the second season. There was one of my customers, Mike Rockall, who owned Whittlebury Hall next to Silverstone, had taken a bit of an interest during the year and been watching it. I'd got towards the end of the season and just thought I need another challenge of, you know, and I was looking at maybe Sports Max or Britcar or stepping up. I got a phone call at work from Mike Rockall saying, you know, how's the season gone? And I think they just put, I was the first person in the UK to win a championship, or to have won it already. And that had all been in the press a little bit. And he phoned up and said, you know, what are you doing next year? I said, well, I'm looking at Sports Max. He said, I want you to do British touring cars. So, and that was like, I nearly fell off my seat. It just don't happen like me. So I remember sitting in the office. I remember I went bright red in the face and was quite taken aback by the phone call. So, yeah, that sort of started up and gave us a bit of a platform for it. So I ended up selling the M3, which I won the championship in. And then we were looking at, and BMW were advertising, because we was a BMW approved repairer, only just sort of quite new to BMW approved repairer, and BMW were advertising the 120D as a motorsport package. A bit of a sister cars to the E90, and they were winning the VLN races over in Germany with it. I thought the 1 Series being a little bit more nimble, shorter wheelbase would probably suit the UK circuits. So we looked more into it and got talking to BMW Motorsport about it. Biggest mistake I made was Schubert were building the cars in Germany for BMW Motorsport. They had 3 or 4 cars that had been used in VLN races that were probably a higher spec than what mine was. I could have bought one of them. I think it was 120,000 euros at the time. or I could buy the kit, I think, for €85,000. I know that, I mean, obviously the euro was about 160 odd to the pound at the time. So it was about £70,000 for the main car and about 55, might have been more than that, actually. I think mine was 95,000, I think I paid for mine, euros, which is about 60,000. If I'd spent 75, I would have probably got the Schubert car. But to me, it was second hand. It had done VLN races, some of them are 24-hour races and 6-hour races. And I thought it was a kit you just put together. So I thought, right, okay, we'll do it. What I didn't realise is we'd end up with about 4,000 bits in big boxes. We had the shell come through, but I had the VLN kit with it, but you had to cut and modify the shell. No instructions, everything in German. And it was like I just bought a £60,000 Meccano kit. And you're looking at it, we got the car on the 14th of Feb. Season was supposed to start on the 1st of April, 2nd of April, I think it was. And I must admit, I didn't know what I'd got myself into. And when you start unloading the boxes and taking the stuff out, you know, we were opening. I took out a brake servo and thought, brake servo? I can't. Surely they run a pedal box. And basically their kit, they'd never sold one of these kits to anybody outside of BMW Motorsport or Schubert, to be fair. So we were the first to build it. And it was, you know, I was mainly talking to the parts department and they were supplying. And then I was having to get bits, you know, I had to go and get a dash and stuff off a normal 1 Series and take the airbags out of it. And I think it was quite apparent that a lot of the fundamental stuff was right, was the VLN car, but Schubert had obviously done quite a lot to them. BMW sold them the kit. You know, they'd put pedal box on it, they were running Motorsport ABS. And I don't think my knowledge at the time was enough. You know, I'd built my first car, which was an XR3, done the M5, West Suffolk racing, and been quite heavily involved. And I think it was, you know, we realised when we were putting it together, it was a marathon task, but I'm one of them people that, you know, you started something, you got to finish it and get it done. So we were working 8 till 5, 8 till half 5 normal hours. And then down and tools, grabbing fish and chips, I went to the race car till 2, 3 in the morning for about a 6 or 7 week period. But with no instructions and nothing, we managed. The engine was together in like a flight case. But the rest of it was, we were doing mock setups up the suspension, everything else, just to try and get everything to point in the right direction. But that was
always a diesel. Did you have a look into the like the petrol engine, or was it always diesel for you?
Well, the World Touring car was massively more money. When I spoke to BMW Motorsport, they said and I spoke to Schubert, who were building the cars for them, and they said, look, I said, what's the difference between your 120 and your lap times on your 3 Series? And they said, well, we reckon that's about a second a lap. But they were running at 245 brake, so the car was running to do a 24-hour race. You know, to do 10,000 kilometres without anything falling off. So we thought, well, actually, if we can, they run to certain regs for weight, we could probably get it a little bit lighter. We could probably up the power and run it, you know, more sort of, you know, they said they had a new modification to 265 that was due out virtually as we were starting the first race of the season. And we thought we can probably bring it up to nearly like 285. And that should make up for the seconds. And we should have a fairly competitive car that is, you know, should be fairly reliable, expecting it to do 10,000 kilometres at a time. So, you know, they had the Z4, the E90 wasn't being advertised. So that was mainly, I mean, there was a lot of these cars. My car was number 7, 007, as it said on it, but there you go. So we basically, we looked at it, saw the kit, knew I could buy it, BMW approved repairer, you know, chucked myself into it head first, probably hadn't looked at it. I probably should have gone over and looked at the cars first, and I would have known, talking to them, what to expect to get. I think if I'd bought the car ready built and ready set up, I think Handstuck and there was another lady racer, I can't think of her name now. who used to do a lot of the B&W stuff. So, you know, I spoke to B&W and they sold it to us like we should get it up to spec without spending so much money. I probably thought I knew quite a bit about race cars. And the biggest shop, we got it all up and running. Got it all running, got it going. Went round Snetterton, and that was Snetterton, the old circuit before they done the 300. My lap record was a 117 dead in the M3 E36. You know, the touring car boys were sort of 112, 113s. And the first time, the quickest I gave it was about a 123. And it's like, oh, mate, what have we done here? You know, we had to modify the bodywork, lower it, take some weight out of it. By the time we got to the start of the season, we were probably doing 118s, but I weren't as quick as my Kumo car. We knew we had some modifications they were sending out to us fairly soon for the bigger turbo and more power. I suppose you look at development, how we were doing 123s the first time. I think the last time I tested before Brands, when I had the big smash, I think we'd got the times down to about 114. So we'd moved a massive amount. I mean, I was H pattern. I was properly clutch and that. I had no sequential. I didn't have a pedal box in it originally, so we put a pedal box in it. I still now have learned a hell of a lot with racing the 1 Series with the V8 in it that I do now. We're changing a lot of stuff like, you know, the roll centers and working on the geometry of the car. Understand a lot more that I could have got even more out of the car when I did, but you know, it's just one of them. We got it close. I was planning. We had a biofuel company. We're talking about sponsoring for next year and a bigger budget we'd had the year before, and we knew the car. We had a sequential. Quaife had done a deal with us to get one of their sequentials in it. I tested the car at Silverstone. It was fairly close to the pace of what the main were. But by then I was going through a divorce and couldn't afford, you know, when the sponsor pulled out 2 weeks before the start of the season, that sort of bugged us up really. So the car then went on. That sat. I sold it to Belgium, to a garage in Belgium. Nick Leeson ran it for a few races in a better form. We then went, then got sold. I had to sell it in the end, which is still kicking myself for selling it, knowing what I spent on my car I got at the moment. And went to Belgium and sat for 4 years, and then somebody bought it and it won the diesel class from the Bell car, which is a Belgian touring car, 2 years in a row, which shows you how far we'd taken the car. And it was probably would have been a lot more competitive in 2008 if I could have afforded to race it. But
yeah, a little bit. It went on to be fairly successful, but obviously you weren't driving it, which was a shame. But
no.
Bringing it back to when you first started, do you remember what the initial reaction was when you kind of wheeled it out and people were like, God, this is a diesel on the grid?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was diesels were going through a phase when they were coming out of piezo injectors, and there was a lot of, you know, diesels are really, you know, were very, very popular. We knew that Seat were looking to go out. And I think that's what got a lot of the attention when I first come out, that we were the first diesel, and the noise it made, you know, it just sounded like it whistled around the circuit. Some people loved it. Some people used to drive them mad and say, how can you drive that sort of thing? But yeah, I think it was, a lot of people looked at it and it started up and they virtually gave it a double take because it just didn't sound nothing like what they thought it did. But it was going to. But yeah, it was... it certainly got a lot of interest that I probably wouldn't have done if it had been a petrol car.
Yeah, certainly. What was it like? Obviously, you've been very experienced in races up to that point, but stepping up into the touring cars, what was it like sat first time? Did it feel any different to you as a racer?
To be honest, I had to walk up and down the pit lane sometimes. Just couldn't believe I was actually there and racing in the touring cars. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's weird, really. You go and watch and you're there on a race day, you're looking at crowds where you've been used to, you know, a few hundred, you're now looking at thousands, like 30 odd thousand. They were predicting, I think, at one of the races. The weird thing is when you get on the race circuit and you physically race, you're just racing. You don't you never notice the crowd or anything else or whatever. You just people trying to go round a track faster. I think when you're doing people stopping you for an autograph and stuff like that, you know, I'm just an average bloke, and they used to say, "Oh, come here for your autograph." I said, "When I was struggling and come last, boy, what do you want my autograph?" type thing. So I suppose I was quite joking. I suppose I took myself seriously, but I didn't think I was above anybody else. I was, you know, I was the minnow of the touring cars, really. There was a few of us. Jim Pocklington was racing, Fiona, one of the Astra blokes. So there was a pack of us at the back. But the trouble is, as I started to step up and get more competitive and move ahead of them, they seemed to drop off and stop racing. So I always seemed to be virtually at the back of the pack. The car was brilliant in the wet. And the one time I probably got to really sort of, you know, I think at Alton Park that year, there'd been a lot crash in the first race. I was having trouble. I thought I had a diff problem and I was getting a vibration. It ended up being an inlet manifold leak, and that was causing a vibration. But when you looked at the times, I think I was down in about 19th. And I got up to about, I think, 13th. Might have even been 12th. But my lap times were, I think it was only Plato, another driver was quicker. You know, I was quicker than Darren Turner, but I was so far back by the time you started making the progress. And because the race had been stopped part of the way through and shortened the race, you never got a chance to show. I think we'd had 3 or 4 wet races. I think the car was, you know, was actually, you know, really good in the wet. But I never got a chance to. The one time I got a chance that we had that big smash, and there was all of us that crashed under the bridge when Matt Jackson spun, and the rest of us pretty much drove into him.
Yeah, I was there. I was I was about, goodness me, I was about 10 actually. I was under that bridge then. Yeah, I remember that.
That was literally where it happened. Where I ended up, and it's a shame because the radio call was an accident on the inside. Keep the outside and keep your foot in. And then by the time I got there, everybody was sliding across. I think if I'd actually braked and avoided that accident, I think because the car was so good on its tyres, so my lap times were only a couple of tenths off at the end of the race when a lot of the top cars were nearly a second off. So, and I think because it was a wet race, I think Chris Stockton got virtually the lead or virtually the top 3 on wet tyres. Phil of them had changed by the time they got restarted. And I think I probably could have made the wets last and been particularly competitive in that race, but you never know. It's just, you know, it's hearsay these days. But I remember coming around and seeing him on the inside and a lot of spray, and I thought the radio cord had been stick the outside. And when I got there, I looked, John George was literally sliding in front of us. I think Martin Bell was in front of me and managed to get through the gap, being clipped. But, you know, it was it. And it broke my suspension because we had the car fixed pretty quick. But the suspension hub had snapped, and that was the only spare I didn't have. And West Surrey had one spare, but they wanted to get the second race out of the way before they'd allow me to borrow it in case they needed it themselves. So if I could have, you know, we'd have been out for the second race. And you know, emotionally, when we got the car built and got it back up on there again and started the third race, everybody in the pits come out and applauded us, and all the crowd did. So on the green flag lap, you know, that choked me up a little bit because, you know, to know that so many people respected that we'd had a badly smashed car and got it repaired was probably one of the lowest days, one of the highest things. Pity that after the start I was the start and got a puncture, and had to come in the pits. But there you go. But apart from that, that was you know, that was a weird old time.
Yeah. Is there anyone particularly that you look at when you was racing that season and just like really stood out to you? Think this guy is just different level?
I think Plato, myself. I mean, I've always been a Plato fan. Probably when I used to watch your touring cars in the late 90s, and he was a real nice bloke. He was one of the people who used to come. His parents lived not far from me, so he used to say, "How's the Ipswich boys today?" And literally used to make a beeline and come and chat to us. Matt Neal used to come and speak quite a lot. Always had time for you. Turkington, I think, was another one who made you feel very welcome. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, when you get on the circuit, you realise you're just a bunch of blokes. There's good banter. You're all trying to race the same thing. You know, I found it in some ways, it wasn't very different to club motorsport, apart from the big crowds and making sure you had to, to park your truck in the right place and all the bits and pieces. But when you basically with a group of blokes who want to go faster than you at the end of the day. And to be fair, most of them, there was very few of them who were standoffish. 80% of the grid I could talk to, like I was someone I've been racing with for years, which was, quite not what I expected, to be fair.
Yeah, no, it's cool. So the last question I always ask everybody, if you was to enter a team now and you was one of the drivers, I said to you, right, we've got any budget in the world, go out and pick a car for me to race and pick a teammate, who would you have?
Teammate, because I think showed this year when Ash Sutton drove. I mean, I know Aidan Moffat, weird enough, has got a few of the sponsors that I had, because it was PPG and that were a sponsor for us. They've obviously, he's got a lot of the stickers on that I had, and Aidan, I've seen at some of the motorsport, the motor trade dues. Always been a nice lad and spoke to us, and I thought he'd done particularly well in the Mercedes. Watching Ash Sutton, to be fair, if you look at it, when he was in the Subaru with Jason, not many people there's not many people stay with Jason. I know Jason obviously had a few car issues that year, but you look for somebody consistent to be up the top in a car that Jason struggled to be in. You look at Aidan Moffat, who's a decent driver. Ash has shown a bit of class, particularly in that last race, in a rear-wheel drive against Turkington, because I'm always a bit of a Turkington fan, especially if Jason isn't racing. But the way he drove in that car, I thought he's a good driver at the start of the season. By the end of the season, I think he really showed his class. So if I want to learn off somebody and drive and try and push myself to try and beat the edge, I think him at the moment, I would say, would be the driver. There's a lot of decent, a lot of very, very good drivers out there, and a lot of young up-and-coming drivers at the minute. Josh Cook is another one who I think, is a quality driver. The company he does work through, do the suspension on my car at the moment, always really helpful. Car-wise, well, I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not so keen on the Infinity, but I think that's because they're a little bit oddball. But I suppose it might get them better sort of, how you can say, I think it raised the profile, them being at the front of that. I can't think the cars really. I've always been an Audi fan and drive Audis myself, but I think there was one Audi, the one that rolled at Croft, I think, wasn't there? So there's a couple of Audi A4s. I think if you're looking for a competitive car, I think you've got to look at the BMs and Hondas. Are probably, if you look at it, normally sort of fairly well above, I would say. So I'd probably end up being a BM because I raced them for 20 years, but there you go.
Yeah, that's that's exactly the same answer as Mike Epps, the fella that was obviously Team Hardy. He said he'd take the BM, and he said he would take Ash Sutton. The only reason he wouldn't is because he'd probably beat him. That was it.
No, the hard thing is doing a year of touring cars and being in something that's so oddball to everybody else. I sort of came away thinking I had unfinished business and I'd like to go back and, and try and show what I can do. I still would love to jump in a touring car and have a day testing it and see what I compare to the top drivers, because I'll probably never ever know if I was that good a driver or whether I was just lucky in the championship. But I don't think I'm lucky because I won races since and against some good drivers at the moment. But you've always got that bit missing that you think, I'd like to have, I'd have liked to jump in, a like for like car and just see how close I can get to the top boys. I've always done well in the race cars, and when my race cars are sold, the people who've always bought them have never gone as quick as I've gone normally. And when I've jumped in cars with teammates or people's cars who've done well, I've always done well with their cars and normally been the quicker driver. But at that level, time in the seat is massive. Those who can be out and be testing the cars and racing and be on the circuit that much, it'd be nice to. I'd still like to one day, if I can, before I'm too old and sort of wore up, to you know, to go out with somebody in a touring car. I mean, I'm racing one of the TCR cars this year in the Brick Car Series. So I might get to do a TCR race. We'll have to wait and see. But I think that will probably give me, because I know what the cars are, you know, are able to do, to see whether that will, I might be a bit more of a gauge on to what other people. I think Turton's brother drove the car that we've got, and I think he won TCR Championship, must have been 2019, I presume.
Yeah.
So it'd be nice to jump in it and see what I'm like in that one and see how that sort of fares. But I don't think you could be, I think going back, I'm probably more of a 90s and 2000s, sort of they're the cars, the era that I really liked. I think when touring cars were, you know, when you had the manufacturers, the big budgets, and the, you know, the Tim Harveys and Patrick Watts and people like that when they were racing, I'd still like to jump in something compared to one of the top drivers and just see, with a bit of time to get used to the car, you know, if I could get that close to it. I don't know. I don't suppose I'll ever find out, to be honest with you, but there you go. We'll see.
If any of the teams are listening, then yeah, they heard it here. Get you in a seat.